it's Kathy Kreskin, and I am back with my geriatric care channel, Geriatric Care 1, and we are doing the dysfunctional family, the worst kind of family, or the worst kind of challenge a geriatric care manager has. So, how do you know you're working with a dysfunctional family? I went through a whole bunch of stuff, but in the last episode and the episode before, but now I'm going to give you some real benchmarks, and there's 10. Okay, so, number 1, you know you're working with a dysfunctional family, whether you're a geriatric care manager, a fiduciary, aging social worker, whatever. You know that you are working with one if they're contentious. And what do I mean by that? Is that old fights erupt with your client and the family. And now, you have an aging client and, midlife adult children, and they're arguing over something that happened 40 years ago. Bad sign. Bad sign. Because this is probably a cyclic thing. But contentiousness, arguing over who mom loved best, who burnt that pot, whose fault is it that I'm the queen bee and my wings are injured? Well, if you had been a better daughter and hadn't, used drugs when you were younger, I wouldn't have been so stressed so that I fell down and injured my wings. Okay, so contentious is number 1, and contentiousness can go into a lot of different things. Usually it's contentiousness over money. Contentiousness over inheritance, we mentioned this in the very beginning, and contentiousness over love in the family, who mom loved best. So, what's number 2? Number 2, you are working with a dysfunctional family. Oh my God. Anger. You say, duh. Well, duh, yeah. Anger. There is physical anger in this family, and there is emotional anger, and they come out in physical abuse and emotional abuse. And the number 3 that is really, nobody talks much about this, they talk a lot more, is financial abuse, which is huge, huge, huge in the dysfunctional aging family. Anybody out there that's ever read about Mrs. Astor, who, was the famous Astor family. I won't go into the whole thing. There's a wonderful book about it, but her son just went to prison over financial abuse. Now, you would think that there would be enough money there, but I guess not. So, physical abuse, emotional abuse, that's sign number 2. And that all has to do with anger over something and acting that anger out. Okay, number 3. We're only going to do 3 right now. And the number 3 reason that you know you're working with a dysfunctional aging family is CutOff. Now, what's that? Well, a lot of people do it. And it's distancing yourself from someone else in the family. Someone who perhaps is your mother, and things got so difficult that you decided to keep your own mental health. You wouldn't talk to her anymore. Or your sister, who just continually maybe abused you physically as you were a young kid, and then, it could be molestation. It could be a lot of things. But distancing, which means cut off. If you've cut off is in a family, you immediately know that this is a dysfunctional family. Not blaming either source, you don't really know where it came from, might be justified, but you are working with a dysfunctional family. To give you an example, and I'm going to end here. I had a client, and I'll call her Mrs. Witch. And Mrs. Witch was a very, very wealthy person. Very, very wealthy. And she, her daughter cut her off and didn't talk to her for 20 years. what happened when Mrs. Witch became very disabled and eventually was dying, she had in the meantime adopted her care provider. This is a business where you can't make these things up. You just can't. You know, reality is so amazing. She had adopted her care provider. She was mentally clear. She legally had the right to do it if she wanted to. And she had a hard time dying. Very hard time dying. And was probably surrounded by, you know, all these implications, which were cut off. So I'm not making a judgment. Some families really need to do it, but it's a sign that you're working with a dysfunctional family. So we will come back to this. I've only gotten through 3. Maybe you've seen them all, or some of them, and we'll be still dealing with a dysfunctional family. Go to my website, kathykress.com. You can find out all about me, my books, my manuals, and I will see you next time.